When the news of Ozzy Osbourne's death spread across the world, it was as if time stood still. People didn't just hear about a rock star passing, they felt as though a part of their own soul had been taken away. It was more than losing a musician, it was losing a friend who had been there for them in their darkest hours. For over half a century, Ozzy's voice wasn't just something you listened to on the radio. It was a voice that could pull you out of despair, that could tell you, without words, you're not alone. The morning he died, the world didn't just lose an artist. We lost the man who could make you feel understood when no one else could. His passing didn't come with applause or cheering. Instead, it was marked by a heavy silence, a silence so loud it broke hearts everywhere. But if the world was mourning, Sharon Osbourne, his wife, was living through a pain far deeper. She wasn't just saying goodbye to a famous musician. She was saying goodbye to the man who had held her hand through every storm, who had promised her he'd never let go. She had stood beside him through the chaos, the battles, the victories, and the moments when even surviving felt impossible. Her grief wasn't for the legend the world saw, it was for the man she loved, the man who made her laugh, who cried with her, who fought for them both. Before we go further, let's pause for a moment. Let's raise a thumb, a small, simple gesture to honor the Prince of Darkness, a man whose life was a whirlwind, who poured his entire being into every note, every scream, every raw performance. People didn't just hear Ozzy Osbourne, they felt him. Ozzy never had the polished image of a traditional rock star. He didn't follow the rules, he didn't fit the mold. What he had instead was presence, a force you couldn't ignore. His rise to fame wasn't smooth. He wasn't discovered and handed a career. He fought for it, piece by piece, through blood, sweat, and scars. Born into poverty in Birmingham, England, arrested by the time he was 17, and dismissed by the music industry as someone with no real talent, Ozzy's life could have ended before it began. But somehow, in all that failure and rejection, he found his voice, and when he did, it wasn't just music. It was an echo that reached into the hearts of people who felt broken and misunderstood. That wild, unpredictable energy he carried wasn't an act, it was survival. People still talk about the infamous 1980 bat-biting incident. To outsiders, it looked like some outrageous stunt. But to those who knew Ozzy, it was just him being raw, impulsive, and utterly unfiltered. And the most telling part, he didn't walk off stage afterward. He kept singing, because for Ozzy, the stage wasn't just a place to perform, it was where he could be himself, where the pain, the chaos, and the madness could be transformed into music. He didn't sing to build fame, he sang to survive, even when spinal surgeries left him struggling to move. Even when Parkinson's began to take away his mobility, he never stopped. I owe it to them, he once said about his fans, and he meant it. Through decades of addiction, illness, and near-death experiences, Ozzy kept getting back up. His solo career wasn't just a second chapter, it was a rebirth. From No More Tears to Ozfest, he gave the misfits of the world a voice. He became a symbol for everyone who felt like they didn't belong. And yet, as fans got to know him more, many realized that behind the wild persona was a man who was painfully human. He wasn't a distant idol, he was one of us, struggling, fighting, trying to keep going. He once said, "I'm not a role model, I'm a warning." But in truth, he was both proof of the damage life can do, and proof of how much strength a person can have. Even as his body began to fail him, Ozzy's voice kept going. Music wasn't about entertainment for him, it was an exorcism. It was how he wrestled with his own demons while reaching out to others lost in theirs. His final album, Patient Number 9, wasn't made to break records, it was his way of saying goodbye. Every note, every lyric was like a candle flickering against the darkness that was closing in. His last public appearance in Birmingham wasn't a concert, but it didn't need to be. He didn't sing, just standing there was enough. By that point, he had nothing left to prove. He had already given the world everything. Sharon, by his side as always, understood. That moment was his way of saying farewell, on his own terms. In his final days, his family stayed close. Sharon, Jack, Kelly, and Amy surrounded him with love, reading him letters from fans whose lives had been changed, or even saved, by his music. Those last moments were a reflection of his whole life, defiant against the odds, unapologetically real, and full of connection. Ozzy never hid from his past. He didn't rewrite his mistakes or try to look perfect. He showed the world the scars, and in the end, he found peace, knowing he had done what he was meant to do. The grief people felt when he passed wasn't just because we lost a talented musician. It was because we lost someone who made us feel seen, someone whose honesty and pain gave us the courage to face our own. His legacy, it locked inside his albums. It's alive in every person who found a reason to keep going because of his songs. His voice still roars, in the wail of a guitar, in the cry of someone, singing his lyrics alone in their car, in the silence between heartbeats where you remember you're not alone. When he died, it left a hole in the world, but it also set off a wave of love and remembrance. Fans across continents gathered, in Birmingham, at his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, in Tokyo, in Los Angeles, to share stories of how his music had carried them through nights they didn't think they'd survive. They brought flowers, lit candles, painted murals, and sang his songs together. For me, the memory is personal. I was 14, standing at the edge of my own breaking point, ready to give up. Then I heard it, "Mama, I'm coming home." It was like Ozzy's voice reached into the dark and pulled me back. I chose to stay. I chose life. It wasn't just the melody that saved me. It was the raw truth in his voice, the unpolished way he said, "I've been there too." Even now, his influence doesn't come from flashy tributes or formal ceremonies. It lives in the quiet moments, a nurse humming changes at a patient's bedside, a teenager hearing Paranoid for the first time and feeling something shift inside, a group of friends blasting Crazy Train on a long drive. Ozzy didn't just write songs. He gave people a way to translate their pain into something that could be carried, even cherished. That's why his absence feels so heavy, because he wasn't just part of music history, he was part of people's lives. Industry leaders announced tribute concerts, exhibits, and foundation work. But no grand stage can match the real tributes, happening every day, the personal ones. In his hometown, people still gather at his murals, laying down black roses, writing letters, and telling stories. Around the globe, from small bars to massive stadiums, musicians play his songs in honor of the man who taught them that music could be both a weapon and a lifeline. But no one's loss runs deeper than Sharon's. For over 40 years, she wasn't just his wife, she was his anchor. She stood in his corner when the world walked away, when addiction blurred his reality, when illness weakened his body. She was his fiercest protector, the one who kept him moving forward when he thought he couldn't. Single quotes T.Now, as she grieves, she's also determined to protect what he left behind. Plans for the Wembley Memorial Concert and the Ozzy Osbourne Legacy Foundation aren't just events, they're promises. Promises to keep his work alive in mental health, addiction recovery, and music education. She's also writing a memoir about his final decade, not as a celebrity tale, but as a love story. A brutal, beautiful, and honest account of the man she knew better than anyone, the man who laughed loudly, cried freely, and fought until his last breath. Ozzy once said, "If I can't sing, I'll scream. If I can't scream, I'll whisper, but I won't leave in silence." That's the man Sharon knew. And that's the man the world will remember, even now. Though the music has stopped, the echo remains. And for anyone who has ever been saved by a song, that's enough to keep going. Behind the scenes, she's working quietly, but with fierce determination to keep his name alive. She is building something lasting for him, a legacy made of strength, hope, and truth. the tribute concert, the memoir, and the charitable foundation, not just events or projects. They are pieces of a bigger mission. Her goal is simple, but powerful, to make sure Ozzy's influence never fades. She wants future generations, especially those who are struggling, to remember his voice and his story so they know they are not alone. That is what Ozzy Osbourne represented. He was more than a rock star. He was a man who shared his pain and his truth so openly that others could find their own courage. His death may have ended the sound of his voice, but the spirit behind it will never disappear. Somewhere, right now, a young person is picking up a guitar for the first time because of Ozzy. Somewhere else, a recovering addict is finding hope in his story and in the silence he left behind. Sharon is holding onto that space and turning it into music, memories, and moments the world will never forget. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just find his place in music. He changed the way people thought about living openly and without apology. The city where his rebellious voice first echoed from small pub stages is now preparing to honor him permanently. Plans are already moving forward for a public monument, with a plaza and square to be renamed Osbourne Yard. One city council member called him the city's most fearless and global voice. While the hometown tribute grows, the music world is also coming together. Across the ocean, Wembley Stadium, where Ozzy created unforgettable moments, is set to host a massive tribute concert. Rock legends and today's stars will share the stage to celebrate the man who reshaped rock music. The event will connect musicians from different generations in one powerful farewell. But perhaps the most moving tribute is not from famous people or big events, but from his fans. In less than 2 days after his passing, over 500,000 people signed a petition calling for him to receive a posthumous knighthood. Even though he was never knighted in his lifetime, his supporters believe his contribution to British culture deserves that honor. The UK's Department for Culture, Media, and Sport has acknowledged his impact on taking British music to the world. Major broadcasters like the BBC and ITV have already aired specials celebrating his life. In the United States, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is preparing a special exhibit dedicated to him. This new section will include rare, never-before-seen footage, handwritten lyrics, and stage outfits from different eras of his career. Scholars are also beginning to study his life and work in detail, adding courses about him to university programs. They're exploring how heavy metal and his music gave voice to people in times of social and personal struggle. Ozzy was never just a performer. He was someone who could take feelings like anger, loneliness, and pain and turn them into powerful art. His music gave comfort to generations of people who needed to hear that they weren't alone. For all the wild stories and controversies, the truth is that he proved being imperfect could still change the world. His legacy is not just in awards and platinum albums. It's in the way his voice became the soundtrack of rebellion, hope, and survival for millions. Even though the world has said goodbye to him, his presence still lingers. His final bow wasn't the end, it was the beginning of his place in legend. In the days after his death, people everywhere weren't just grieving, they were reflecting on what it meant to live in an era when Ozzy was part of the soundtrack of life. He wasn't simply a musician, he was an example of resilience. Ozzy showed people it was okay to be imperfect, broken, and still worthy of love. His influence lives not only in records, but in the hearts of those who survived dark times with his voice guiding them. Bands like Ghost, Slipknot, Avenged Sevenfold, and Bring Me the Horizon don't just admire him, they carry his spirit in their music. Ozzy wasn't a formula to copy, he was a force of nature, a voice for misfits everywhere. One quote that has now spread across the internet like a mantra says, he didn't just leave behind music, he left behind a philosophy. Be loud, be broken, be fearless, be you. These words have become a rallying cry for anyone who has felt out of place. He showed the world that vulnerability is strength, that chaos isn't failure, and that music is a lifeline. Even when his health began to fail and the tremors grew worse, His voice kept its raw edge. He once said, "If I die on stage, let it be because I was doing the only thing I've ever truly loved." Though his last concert happened months before his passing, it felt like he left the world doing exactly that, giving his all to his audience. Today, his life is studied in pop culture and music history classes. In therapy groups, his lyrics are quoted by people learning to face their demons. In homes around the world, his songs still play. From Paranoid to Mama, I'm Coming Home, bringing both release and joy. His lasting gift wasn't perfection, it was honesty. He taught people how to rise while keeping their scars, how to love without hiding the darkness inside. Because of him, the house of metal and just loud. It's full of soul. That house stands tall, offering shelter to every voice that shakes but chooses to sing anyway. As long as there are people who value truth over perfection and passion over fear, Ozzy Osbourne will never fade. His voice will continue to live in every rebellious whisper and every anthem that refuses to die quietly. If Ozzy was the fire, Sharon was the steady flame. For over 40 years, she stood beside him, not just in the spotlight, but in the chaos, the illness, and the pain. She wasn't only his wife, she was his protector, his strategist, and his strength when he could no longer carry himself. Through addiction and health battles, she never wavered. Now, after his final breath, Sharon carries the responsibility of keeping his memory alive. She does it not with myths, but with truth. Not with empty ceremony, but with love. Every tribute planned, every charity launched, every story told, her hands are in it. Ozzy may have been known as the Prince of Darkness, but Sharon was his light. If his story has touched you, share the song or the moment that meant the most to you. Tell how his music helped you through your hardest days. Let's keep his spirit alive, loud, fearless, and unapologetically real. Even though Ozzy Osbourne is no longer with us, his voice still echoes in every note of rebellion and every song of survival. He showed the world that being broken doesn't mean you're defeated, and that truth spoken loudly can change lives. His music will always be more than sound. It's a lifeline, a reminder to be fearless, raw, and unapologetically yourself. Sharon now carries his legacy, ensuring his spirit never fades. Share your favorite Ozzy moment or song in the comments, and let's keep his fire alive for generations to come. Long live the Prince of Darkness.